Hello, I'm Natasha Reardon and it's my pleasure to welcome you to St Martin in the Fields. We're just about to record another concert as part of our new series, Fresh Horizons. Now, over the past few weeks, our musical focus has turned towards Easter, and our final festive offering to you comes from the exciting young vocal consort, the Gesualdo Six. Ahead of their concert, I'm joined by the Gesualdo Six in their entirety to find out more about what we are going to hear. Good evening to the Gesualdo Six.
Hello.
Hello. Hello. Now, before we start talking about motets and the Renaissance and Easter in general, I wondered if we could have a little introduction, one by one, to find out who you are and which voice part, starting with you, Guy.
Hello, I'm Guy and I'm the first countertenor in the group.
And I'm Andrew. I sing second countertenor along with Guy.
Hi, I'm Joseph. I'm the first tenor in the group.
I'm Josh. I'm the second tenor in the group.
I'm Owen. I direct the group and also be singing a little bit of bass today as well.
I'm Mike. I sing baritone.
I'm Sam and I sing bass.
That was very melodious. Thank you very much for that introduction. And it's lovely to be around so many people in a small space and not feel worried about masks and all that sort of stuff. It kind of feels a little bit back to normal.
It's very refreshing, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's really, really nice. And tonight, your concert is a special selection of Easter music. Owen, could you tell me about what we're going to hear and how you put this programme together?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're really excited to be presenting this concert. The title is English Motets, but that just kind of gives a little summary of really what the music is. All music of the English Renaissance, a very broad spectrum, and motets itself is quite a vague term. So we've used both of those things to our advantage, and we've themed it around Easter. We've sung a lot of music for the season of Lent recently, so it's been nice to sing things that are a little bit more upbeat. Pieces by Bird that we've not performed before, like Viri Galilei, right through to Tallis's masterful piece in 7 parts, Locobantor. That's kind of Pentecostal. So what we've done is we've taken Easter as our starting point and sort of looked ahead as well at what's to come in the church year. People who have seen us perform before and heard us perform English motets might recognise some of the pieces. What we like to do is keep and retain some of that integrity, some of that structure, so that some of the pieces that have existed in our repertoire for a number of years, we sort of keep hearing them anew. But then we also like to introduce new works into that, new to us, I should say. We haven't discovered anything for this project necessarily, but there are other things that we are looking at doing just that from very different musical traditions. So yeah, this programme is something we're really excited to present, and as you said, not just being together in the same room singing together, but also looking forward to what's to come, not just in the church year, but also as we start to think about welcoming people back into the concert venues as well.
It's wonderful, wonderful music. It was our first CD we recorded, English Motets, but we could probably get another 5 or 6 CDs easily without breaking a sweat out of this stuff. Like, Tallis and Bird, even Bird alone wrote the Gradualia. He wrote music for every Sunday and feast day in the Catholic year, and it's all brilliant. And a lot of it is written for some combination of our forces, ideally. And then you've got Tallis, and you've got Ty, and you've got Wilkes, and you've got Gibbons, and we go back into the earlier stuff as well. We've just come back from York, where we did a lot of 15th century music, recorded music, which would have been performed in the spaces in this sort of 15th century and earlier medieval spaces up in York. And that music's wonderful, and there's a wealth of it. We could be recording this until, for decades, hopefully.
Yeah, exactly.
And we love sharing it. We love performing it in concert as well. It's fabulous.
It's such a selection of different sounds, isn't it? Because that period is quite long, and there was so much going on during it with, the Reformation. There was so much change and so much adaptation to what was happening that the musical styles are so different. How do you go about sort of putting together a concert which sort of makes sense maybe chronologically, but stylistically is so different? And is that quite difficult to adapt from one piece to the next?
That's a really good question. When programming English motets, we wanted to not necessarily present a chronological survey, because that doesn't necessarily give the best concert experience. If you are throwing music at people from the medieval period, Dunstable, Cornish, first up. Some people love that. But to kind of welcome them in with something that is in the vernacular, so Gibbons, one of the songs that he wrote, we sort of start with that. In fact, that's the first time we performed that piece, and we wanted to bookend the concert with Gibbons just because it worked well for the season, but also it's very beautiful music, and especially Drop Drop Slow Tears. Pretty much anyone who's ever sung in the choir has sung that piece.
Why is that so beautiful? I was listening to it earlier, and I just can't quite work out why. There's a glow to it. What is it about it that makes it just so perfect?
I think maybe it's the sort of the fact that the text is so clear and is being sung together for everybody. In addition to the just general familiarity, perhaps, of it as well.
It's homophonic, it's simple, but it's also got a few little sort of modal tricks to it, you know, the way he uses the flat seventh in it. And you don't notice it when you listen to it because it's kind of such a clever little, almost like, you know, if you look at it, it sits in the New English Hymnal alongside a whole lot of these Vaughan Williams collected folk songs. It has that kind of folk melody type thing about it. But, you know, it's so intelligible, and I think that's something which it's easy to approach it on a basic level if you're just listening to it. It's hard to perform really well, I think. I think, you know, the more we've been at stuff, I think we find that the homophonic music is the hardest because there's nowhere to hide, and if you're performing it to a really high standard or trying to, you've got to all be of one mind in how you do it. And I think that's I think a piece like the Gibbons really can show that off.
My experience with that text, first I sung the Leighton, having not sung the Gibbons growing up, other than maybe once or twice on a Sunday as a kind of hymn. And I was particularly affected by the Leighton setting of it. So it's got to be also something to do with that fantastic poetry, I think.
Absolutely. The way I hear that piece, as it's been mentioned already, it's essentially a hymn. It's 4 parts, homophonic, strophic. But unlike most other hymns where you sort of, you know, you have a tune and a harmony, or you have a tune, a bass line, and then inner voices that create the harmony between them, it really feels like Drop Drop Slow Tears is composed more like a duet in a way. A duet between the soprano and alto, and a duet between the tenor and the bass. And I think it's that sort of style of singing that really lends a different kind of beauty.
It's consort music at the end of the day. Lots of these composers would have been writing for not only vocal consorts but also viol consorts as kind of the secular music of the day. A lot of it was either some combination of voices and viols. And that means that ultimately speaking, they're looking at every single homophonic line and thinking, does this make sense from a melodic perspective?
And going back to what you just said about the poetry, how important are words to you as a group? Because obviously the music not necessarily takes precedence, but you know, we associate you as a musical group with the music. But the poetry and the words, how much are you thinking about that when you're selecting what you're going to perform?
Oh, I think if you're going to really access this music, it has to be fundamental. You have to start there and then go on to having known the music, maybe you just can go back to the words always. It's always a rich well from which to draw information, even about musical things, like about phrasing or about how exactly. So we were doing the White, Christy Acquis looks at Diaz, and exactly where all of those word stresses come really affects how you sing those very vertical chords. In the White, that every chord has to be perfectly lined up because it's so homophonic. But in order to get a kind of sense of that music flowing, you really have to know, without looking down, sort of where the next word stress is going to come.
But also in some of the more polyphonic settings in Latin, like Aspice Domine, to do the word stresses in the right way clarifies the polyphonic texture in just the right way and in just the way the composer intended, because the composer starts with the text.
Well, and it's really important to understand in this period in the Reformation how the vernacular coming into musical writing is, you know, not just a new tool for composers to play with, it's something fundamental, and for a lot of these people quite sort of a big political and religious movement. Like if you look at some of the settings, you know, the Christopher Tye, for example, you know, Christopher Tye and Tallis to an even greater extent, they're both chameleons. They both write in all of the styles. You know, Tallis can write a 7-part votive antiphon, which sounds like it could have been written in the Eton Choir book. And he can also do these kind of very direct text setting, 1 note per syllable, no melisma. And to have sat in church and heard that for the first time, having only had Latin as your, which maybe you didn't speak, maybe you weren't literate, but then to have someone actually singing at you in your own language must have been an incredibly exciting development. And, the fact that people were, later on were getting killed for speaking the wrong language in religious contexts is something which is hard for us as a group of 7 chaps in 2021 to kind of get across the importance of. But it's something which has got to be at the back of your mind and at the front of your mind when you're performing it.
And as Joseph so correctly pointed out, the composer starts with the words. There might be composers throughout history that have not paid much attention to the words, but I think the ones that became the most classic and the ones that became the most celebrated all started with the words. And so as interpreters, we have to be able to ask, why did the composer set this word that way? Why did this chord belong to that word? And so on.
It's funny because you can really spot the composers who haven't really thought of the words that much, because pretty much all composers tonight are absolutely fantastic, and you can just read the music first time, second time, and not really thinking that much about the words because it's written so well. Like the music is connected to the words just amazingly, that it's only when you then really get into it that you can really find those extra little details and kind of really make the music more than just great stuff on the page, really kind of sell it.
Well, and the thing about this period is this is when words are starting to become important in notation as well. Like not necessarily 100% of the music we sing today has been texted properly in the part books, but they're beginning to actually, rather than just write, Ave underneath 3 lines of music and then giving you the choice to say it as little or as much as you want. Like, Byrd is a master of madrigalism in sacred music. He is, he's doing effects on different things. Like we haven't sung Vigilate today, which is rare for us in an English motets program because we love it. Yeah. But the things he does in that motet, with the cock crowing, and he'll do little figurations for that. It's like, they've taken the Italian madrigalism and they've run with it.
And I think that for us as a group, our interpretation of this music, of course, we've all grown up with it in our own country, in England, in cathedral choirs and church choirs. But our exposure to the music of Gesualdo, I think, has really influenced the way we do this music. Because the way that we go into not just the meaning of the text as a sentence, but actually individual words and why those words have those notes attached to them within a phrase, is key to unlocking Gesualdo's music. Absolutely, because it's so momentary. And in some senses fragmented, but I think we do bring that approach into all this music tonight.
It sounds like you're all quite well matched to each other in terms of not just musical interests, but the way you're approaching the music and thinking about your responsibility as performers of what you're communicating. What does it take to be a member of Gesualdo Six, and how did you know that you had the right chemistry with each other?
Well, I remember turning up to... I wasn't one of the original members. I think we've got 4 still original members, and the group's been going for 7 years.
Now, yeah.
And I joined the group, actually, I can't remember that, but probably about 4 years ago, and I remember turning up and it just slotting in, which was really nice. Everyone breathed together, stuff was just in tune. So they obviously already had this setup. I don't know where you found it
before you got there. No, it's really exciting actually, because Josh was one of the first people we auditioned. As he rightly said, we came together to sing the Tenebrae responsories for Maundy Thursday by Gesualdo, an Italian composer. Amazing music that we hadn't really done before as musicians. It's very technically demanding. It's sung better by individuals than with a larger group, we feel. But there was a certain excitement to having your responsibility of your own line. And that's what we try, as Joseph said, to bring into this English motets. And so when we it was the first couple of years, and it's always this kind of question, are we going to survive, I suppose, as a group, for want of a better word? We didn't really know after concert one whether we were going to do another one, but we sort of thought, well, we enjoyed it so much, let's do it. And then concert 3 happened, and then we went on tour, and then it just sort of snowballed a bit. And there was a period where we had Sam and Josh join us, and then Andrew's our most recent member, only joined a couple of years ago, and sort of 60% of his time with the group has been during coronavirus, which has been very interesting. And the two aren't related, but they have had an effect on how we've been able to make music together. But what's been really nice is that spirit we had at the beginning, I think, has really continued and has actually been enhanced by the people that have come on board.
We were very much founded as 7 friends, weren't we? And even though I only actually met Joseph at that first rehearsal, we both knew you, and we immediately had very similar, as you said, interests.
I think that is a lovely note to end this on, and thank you so much for being so generous with your time. And you obviously have so many things that you do in your lives, musically and otherwise, and it's wonderful to hear how sort of passionate and connected you all are. But thank you so much to the Gesualdo Six, and really looking forward to watching your concert as part of Fresh Horizons.